Life, Loss and Legacy is a general information podcast only. This does not constitute professional advice as we simply don't know your individual circumstances. If you do have any questions, please be sure to contact the guests of the episode. It should also be noted that the opinions expressed by the guests and host of the podcast are theirs alone and do not represent the opinions or perspectives of their employer or any other associations. That's enough warnings. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to Life, Loss and Legacy, a Planning Solo podcast, all dedicated to helping people in those first 5 years after losing their partner. My name's Jordan Varker. I'm an independent financial advisor and I specialise in helping people make those first steps into their new life. I'm really excited. I'm joined today by Perry Adolphus from Longevity Through Wellness. Perry is a strength and conditioning coach with over 25 years of helping people achieve their personal fitness and health goals. I'm really keen to talk about this today because Perry's got some really good information about people in kind of that older age group, but who are maybe a bit intimidated by exercise or are visiting exercise for the first time. So Perry, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me, Jordan. It's great to be here.
No worries. It's going to be fun. Can you just tell everybody a little bit about your experience as a strength and conditioning coach, please? Just sort of where we're coming from.
Sure. Well, my interests in fitness have been sort of with me for all my life. Basically, I grew up playing competitive sport. Um, I think I started when I was about 6, and probably had about 5 weekends off between the ages of 6 and 17. So there was always, and that was due to the fact that I think I remember I had measles once, and you know, other times I was just maybe not well enough to get on the field, but it was always just sort of going in between soccer and cricket, and if we're not training for that, we're playing that. So if we're not training, we're in the backyard practicing. So the interest in physical movement has been there at a very, very early age. I actually pursued a career in the corporate world to start with, and realised that very, very quickly that sort of work wasn't for me. So the first bit of study that I did, I'm originally from Perth, so the first bit of study that I did was over here in Melbourne when I moved over initially in 1994, I'm going to say, and did a pretty basic Cert 3 and Cert 4 in fitness. I then went overseas, travelled, worked as a trainer, actually got a job as a membership sales consultant at one of the big franchise clubs back then, Holmes Place, which has actually just recently been taken over by Virgin Active, and then sort of pursued my study in that area, and did various sort of extension courses, and got myself skilled up, and eventually did my certification to become a strength and conditioning coach at Loughborough University. So it's working one-on-one for me. I did go down the when I moved back to Australia and I moved back to Melbourne. I actually got more into taking group fitness, and it was actually all outdoor based over in Elwood, just Bayside, one of the
I
Bayside
think that's a
suburbs
keen
of Melbourne.
decision to make in Melbourne, an outdoor based.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I think wherever we are in life, we we're I had a lot of um, get up and go, get up and drive back then. And even the weather couldn't keep me down. So I was running 2 sessions a day, one in the morning, one in the evenings. Um, and it was a different sort of focus. It was more sort of building that camaraderie, building that group mentality. Um, it certainly wasn't as technical as all the sort of training is now that I currently do. Um, but like it suited my purposes and it suited everyone's purposes back then. It was a pretty good following. I had a pretty good group. I met some really, really good people, and even to this day, I still have some of those clients, residual clients left over from that group environment, who come and see me on a one-to-one basis, and these guys are good, close personal friends of ours.
That's
So it
really good.
has, yeah, it was really beautiful, really beautiful. And I'm very lucky. I must say that this sort of role is, you know, um, people probably better know it as personal training, but really is a um, a rapport building, a really trust-based relationship moving forward with your client. Yeah, so that's I've kind of jumped a little bit all over the place just then, Jordan. Sorry about that, but
No, no, it's good to know
it
because
has
I
been.
think that point you make about rapport and trust being so important. We're talking about two pretty crucial things: people's money and people's health. And I think
Yeah,
they're very talking about those things and being involved in those things makes people very vulnerable. And
yeah,
if you can't have somebody you trust to talk to about those things, then it makes it a lot more difficult.
yeah,
But I mean, the people listening to this podcast, in my mind, are very much in that bracket of people 50 plus, um, you know, female, have lost their partner in the last couple of years and they're looking to start again. So we've been through the red light side of things, which is the crucial legal side. We've been through
yeah,
the yellow light things, which is kind of laying that foundation. And I see this green light aspect of life as being a little bit challenging for people because they're building a new life. They're turning that page, and it can come with a bit of guilt and a bit of confusion and a bit of fear. And I think personal training and exercise can be quite intimidating for people. So I'm keen to hear a little bit about your experience on helping people in that bracket take those first steps.
yeah. Okay. Um, all I can do is, I guess, draw upon my experiences and talk to you about a little bit about how those relationships have evolved over the years. Um, you know, I guess regularity is the key here. Um, and I think that is with everything you do in life, right? The more time where your attention goes, energy flows, right? And so when you are committed to improving your health and you are committed to, really taking that on and, um, making some inroads there, then you're going to need to spend some time with either a group, as I mentioned, I was involved with in the very early stages when I first moved back to Melbourne. Um, and, there needs to be an element of trust. And you kind of, look, it's like choosing a friend, right? What determines whether or not someone's a close friend or someone's an acquaintance? You find your vibe tribe. And essentially that's what the people who are still with me today, who have come from that group environment, of which I can think of three. I've got, someone asked me the other day, what's the normal tenure of one of your clients? And, for me, you know, I've had people that have been with me for 8 years, you know, during COVID, um, before COVID, during COVID, after COVID, and continue to, you know, we continue to foster that relationship, and they continue to show me, a huge amount of commitment by turning up.
I
So
think that's a really key point, isn't it? Because I think people can fall into the trap of, oh, I'll leave it, bang, I'll do it now. I'll go really hard at it for 3 months and I'll be sorted. But
yeah, correct. Yeah,
I mean, it's
correct.
that commitment and consistency that's really key, isn't it?
Yeah, it is number one. It's probably, you know, a while ago we used to talk about, different variables that um, we focus on as coaches to really get the most out of our clients. Once upon a time, the mindset was intensity, making it count, going 110%. When you're at the gym, but in actual fact, it's not. And this is a beautiful thing about I guess training and methodologies, and is that sports science is constantly evolving. What we thought of what we thought was the mantra back in the 90s isn't so much so today. There are certain things that have actually stood the test of time, but one of those things that we do realize now is that consistency. It's about developing a ongoing discipline and pattern in your life. Just like you wake up and you brush your teeth regularly without thinking about it in the morning, same goes for training. Same goes for some sort of commitment, some sort of action taken towards your wellness, whether it be going for a walk on a regular basis, on a daily basis, whether it be going to the gym on a daily basis. And remember, from that also stems the social networks that you tend to build when you're involved with something consistently. People start to see your face at the gyms. People start to see your face in classes. You start to develop a deeper relationship if you want to go down the one-on-one route with your trainer, whether that be a man or a woman. And I think that's the really, really important thing to note here, Jordan, is that if I can give your listeners one recommendation, is that listen to your gut, listen to your heart, meet with several, talk to several trainers if you want to go down the one-on-one route, and they've got to resonate with you. They've got to resonate with you, because when you're enjoying the person, even if it's like I've got clients that sometimes I need to pull the intensity back a little bit in that session. It's not so much about the volume of work that we get through in the session. It's actually more about them just being at the session and decombusting, because life isn't linear. Your performance goes up and down, up and down, up and down. Especially as you get into those middle-aged years, and you just can't put foot to the floor anymore. And so you've got to if you're looking for things in a coach, you've got to be able to have empathy and compassion, and just really, it sounds simple, but for me, I need to be able to listen to my clients. How are they feeling? And based on that conversation is how we move forward.
And I think that non-linearity is definitely something that the people listening will have experienced with loss and grief. It does throw you around, and it does put life on pause in a lot of ways, and we're coming back trying to recover from that. But I guess, to address the elephant in the room, I should flag, we're two dudes talking about women's experience of health and fitness. So I'm very conscious of that. So I hope this doesn't, I don't come across patronizing at any stage. But
absolutely,
all the marketing, all kind of the imagery around the gym is very much around kind of young people getting in there, throwing around huge amounts of weight, training till they're sick, high-fiving, all that sort of stuff. But for people that aren't in that group or that phase of life, that makes the gym quite an intimidating place with all the mirrors and all the walking around and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the reason I've asked you to come on is because your approach to exercise and health and well-being is different to that. And I want to get the word out there to people that that isn't exercise. That's something else. That's different.
Mm-hmm.
So when you meet somebody that is in this stage of life that we're talking about, what's your approach to get a gauge of what they need at that moment?
Yeah. This is really simple. A conversation between two people, and this is why I think when, for your listeners, you need to, someone who's had a little bit of life skills, and, there's, when you say personal trainer, don't just think this is going to be a young person. This is definitely a young person. We've all got to start somewhere. There's, accountants, there's lawyers who were young once upon a time too. There were doctors who were young. I guess the point I'm trying to make.
Geez, Perry, doesn't feel like it, I'll be honest with you.
No, that's right. It really does just seem like yesterday. Fortunately, the memory's not going. It might be a little bit short-lived, but the memory's not going. But a person with life skills and life experiences, I feel, would be a better fit for these people who are going through this grieving process, who understand what it's like to take a hit, because exercise can be, and you know what, Jordan, I'll put my hand on my heart and actually say I'm guilty of this. I used to be a very idealistic sort of person, an idealistic trainer. If it wasn't done a certain way, if you weren't doing a certain weight by this particular time, and if you weren't doing this many reps in the gym, then you know you were somewhat falling short of where you need to be.
And I think
But
that
I
kind of
think,
the fear for some people is that kind of that gung ho attitude you're alluding to there that
yeah,
maybe can come
yeah,
through from.
absolutely,
We're painting with a broad brush. Some younger trainers, that you got to do this,
absolutely.
you got to do that. That's not really what it's about anymore, is it?
No, no, it's not. It's not. It is about, exercise, I guess, is not a punishment for what you have or haven't done, have or haven't eaten. Exercise should be about a celebration of what the body can do. Okay. Now, the body is a wonderful thing. It is the way when I train my clients, I make sure that we go through the 7 primal patterns of movement. We go through a lot of mobility stuff and a lot of stability stuff. Mobility and stability probably first. If they're very, very new to the training, to the exercise regime thing, then you need to look at doing things like spending a little bit more time doing mobility. These are all really gentle things that no matter where you are in the fitness spectrum, you can spend time doing. Okay, and these are all questions that I guess they should be asking a coach when they first meet with them if they're thinking about sort of working on a one-to-one basis. How much time does that coach spend on mobility and stability? Okay. Um, Listening to, what sort of time constraints they deal with. Listening to,
Oh,
sitting down and, asking that coach whether or not they have experience with any um, physical restrictions that the client might have. Do you have any clients that have, chronic arthritis in their right shoulder? How do you go about training them? So these are all questions that they could
this was something I was
potentially.
keen to explore a little bit actually, because as we age, our bodies don't always do what we want them to do. Sometimes our
Mm,
bodies aren't where they were 10 years ago. So
mm,
there's sort of chronic conditions that can come up. How do you approach them? So something like, say, arthritis, or something like
mhm.
even osteoporosis, or something like that. How do
Yeah.
you go about incorporating that into the plan?
So there's always going to be something that you can do um, for any type of body, and so it's all about sort of making sure that you've got, um, I guess, some modifications that you can make based on any sort of movement restrictions that they might have. Interestingly enough, um, you mentioned osteoarthritis and arthritis, and let's just say any type of physical restriction that is inflammatory by nature and a little bit restrictive. Um, you can weight training is one of those things that, and obviously I'm not talking about jumping onto huge weights straight away because it's a very progressive overload that you need to impose on the body to get any sort of benefits from, and doing it obviously quite safely. But weight training is a single-handedly the one of the most important things people can do for their body as they age. By far, there's 10 modalities of 10 modalities of fitness: strength, speed, agility, endurance. You know, the list goes aerobic capacity. The list goes on, um, which I can't remember at the moment. But I, I will say that, and there's so much robust evidence out there to support that weight training or strength training is by far the most important modality which feeds directly back into longevity, as is VO2 max. So that is how much the body can actually uptake oxygen and
So
utilize
it's a
oxygen.
cardiovascular
Cardiovascular
efficiency.
and strength in conjunction are the two top things that impact longevity.
And I mean, that
Along
brings
with,
me to.
along with a, go on.
Oh no, no, sorry, no. It just brings me to one of those big cliches that I actually don't know if it's true anymore. But there's always this image I think that women had been convinced or told strength training is going to make you all muscular, and that was a bad thing in the way the
Mm,
story's always been told.
mm, mm.
But that's not the case, though, is it? It's not about
No,
creating those really presenty muscles. It's about more than
no,
that.
no. It's about, I mean, strength training, you just have to look at, like you mentioned, osteoporosis. And things like osteoporosis, osteopenia, brittling of the bones. Um, now, one of the best ways and the number one recommended way to actually help improve that or slow the onset of that down, even for those people who have already been diagnosed with it, is to weight train. Okay. And that all that means is just loading your bones. So it encourages the skeleton to produce more white blood cells and red blood cells. Okay.
Mm.
So, you know, you've got a load. If you don't use it, you lose it. That adage has actually stuck around, right? The body loves to be loaded. There's a lot of physiological and psychological benefits that come from loading the body with weights. And the health benefits there are undeniable.
And we're not talking necessarily about, you're not driving, and I think this is something I want to touch on in a moment. You're not driving clients to hit PBs all the time and start racking up massive weights in a squat rack.
No,
It's about
no,
finding exercises and movements and loads that work for them.
exactly.
In one of our conversations, we talked a little bit about your evolution as a trainer. And you mentioned it earlier that you're maybe a little bit more, I can't remember the term you used, but more gung-ho around how that works.
Hmm.
But you mentioned that you've kind of evolved your mindset on that. So I'm keen to hear a little bit more about how that evolution has played out when you're working with clients.
Research around the form of strength and conditioning, or my area of expertise is called hypertrophy. So basically, teaching a client and training a client to um, put on more muscle on their frame. Okay. Now, it's a progressive thing. It really is a progressive approach that I take. It doesn't happen overnight, um, but it's something that continues to happen and can happen for anyone at any age. Okay, so let's just put that myth aside. If you've been someone who's trained and you've had muscle, and then you have a break and you get back into it 10 years, 20 years later, there's a thing called muscle memory. Okay, that process will actually start to happen again for that client. Okay. Now, the mindset once upon a time was the best way to train to put muscle on was between 8 to 15 reps. Okay. In a particular working set. Let's just say you're doing a bicep curl. Okay. It's about doing 8 to 12 sets and using a weight that brings about that. Now, there's some robust evidence that's been released over the last 5 years to say that, to support that we know we were wrong. In actual fact, the hypertrophy range or the muscle gain range can sit anywhere between 8 to 30 reps. So what that looks like for me and what that has actually meant is that I can walk over to someone and remember, it's a psychological thing. It's not just a physiological thing, right? And hand someone a lighter set of dumbbells for them to do those bicep curls. And for them, that's a lot less intimidating. We go through proper technique, proper biomechanics, how to position their body, how to stabilize their core, how to stabilize their whole body. And then I hand them these lighter weights and they eventually start getting that burn which elicits muscle growth closer towards the 25, 30 rep range. Okay. And that is a better conversation to have because what it does is it's actually reinforcing the mental or the from the brain to the muscle, developing that mind muscle connection. And it gives them, instead of trying to think, am I doing this right? And trying to sort of ascertain that within 8 reps, it gives them more repetition, more practice, a longer set for them to actually establish the coordination and develop skill in order to get that mind muscle connection.
I was going to say, does that make, I mean, this is a very broad term, but does that make injuries less likely than trying to go really heavy for fewer reps, which is that sort of male ego talking? Yeah, okay.
Yes, yeah, 100%. 100%. Even when you're talking, look, let's look at, take a rehabilitation approach to what a, say, allied health practitioner would actually prescribe to their clients, like a physio or a chiro. They would always recommend sort of between, say, 15 to 20 reps, right? And that's a rehabilitative approach of slow, controlled muscles. Now, if an elderly person was given those exercises by a physio, I'm sure, and they hand them a band or they say go buy some bands or go buy some really, really light dumbbells or something like that. That's not really an intimidating experience for that particular client, because it's come from an allied health professional. But essentially what they're doing is resistance training. They're adding resistance to their body. So the same doctrine and the same approach and the same philosophy is now being followed by, let's just say, there are trainers out there that are still very gung-ho and will only specialize in heavy weight training. But for myself, Jordan, if you're asking me, that's something that I now know I can get the same result, being less intimidating, with less weight, more repetitions, as I can someone who's younger who only specialises in, let's say, the gung-ho weights.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
That intimidation factor is a really big one.
It is a big one. Don't get me wrong. I will beast my clients. I will really push them when the time is right. And it certainly isn't within that first. Look, I'm not even going to put a time because every client's different. It really is. I mean, some people's exercise uptake or training uptake, that is how the body responds, is really, really quick, depending on what their exercise history is like. For me, I would take a more conservative approach for someone who hasn't got much of an exercise history. That is much muscle memory. Yeah, and I would err on the side of caution.
It's not just the external intimidation of being in the gym and everyone sort of doing all these big weights. It's also the internal intimidation of I have never exercised or I haven't done it in a long time.
Sure.
Or if I look silly. One area I do want to just cover is, let's say that I come to you and I have some restrictions. So I can't do a full squat, or I have some lower back issues and, I don't know, deadlifts or something like that aren't really an option.
Mm-hmm.
How do you conform your approach around those restrictions that people have?
Sure. Look, I need to dig a little bit deeper with that client, just find out what the actual problem is. Most clients are actually quite well versed as to what's going on with their body because they've had it explained to them. And pain is a really, really powerful teacher in that you find out why you're in so much pain very, very quickly, and you hold on to that. Some people make that about their identity. Some people, obviously, will try very, very hard to rise above that and do everything possible to, obviously, improve. But there is always going to be some modifications that you can make, and this is why it's really, really important for your clients to know that if they do decide to work with someone, decide to work with a coach on a one-to-one basis, the coach has to have a decent amount of anatomical and physio experience and experience in physiology, and be around. And the only way you really truly get that is obviously from a technical background, but also has that coach come through injuries themselves? Do they have people that they're seeing that have the same sort of injuries as the client? For example, we spoke about the back issues. Well, what is the back issue? Whereabouts is the back issue? Do you have any clients that you're currently seeing who have the same sort of issue? There's always things to use to help modify the movements, Jordan. So, for example, if you can't go down and do a full squat, you do a bench squat. It's like coming off the height of a seat, and then you can adjust how high that seat. But everyone can find a way to squat, everyone can find a way to hip hinge, which is, very similar to a squat, but just pushing the bum back. I've got clients who still to this day, after 3 years, hang on to a balancing post and a dumbbell when they're doing a lunge. And they're in a lunge position, and that's okay. Because when I'm not training these people to become sprinters or runners or anything on that, I'm training these people to get stable and be able to sort of, make sure that when they're walking down a footpath or walking on the beach, that they can put one leg in front of the other and, stay upright. It really is about using weight training to be able to transfer across to everyday situations.
It's the functionality. It's not the
It's the functionality. It's the functionality or the transference, as we say.
And I think that idea of progress, not perfection, is something that we really encourage on the financial planning side, because
100%.
There's so much guilt that can come with this. I mean, we'll talk about nutrition in a moment as well, but there's so much guilt that comes with not being perfect all of the time. And we try to push a bit of that away and just say, well, are you better than you were a month ago or a year ago? Yeah, great. So let's just focus on that.
Jordan, I always say this. A bad workout is a workout you didn't have. There is no such thing as a bad workout. Okay? And it's great for people to have their mental benchmarks. It's great for people to know how they can feel. Last week I felt great. This week, training's been a little bit subpar. It's okay. It's absolutely fine. You are still deriving. This is a beautiful thing with exercise, like you go in, you do a little bit, and you derive benefit from that. And if it's not a physical improvement per se, if you haven't put on any muscle, that's okay. You've got the psychological benefits and there's a symphony of hormones that get secreted after a good workout, and these are all feel-good hormones, and this feeds back into your wellness, and it's about regrouping, regenerating, and then hopefully coming back stronger the next day. And this is why it's really, really important as a coach too, that, I sometimes say to clients, you probably need to take a week off. It's called deloading. I say to clients, take a week off. Or take a couple of days off. Yeah, so the really beautiful thing about exercise, Jordan, is that there is always going to be some benefit that you derive from walking into a gym or going for a walk or going to a group. Whether it may not be that's the week that you put on 500 grams of muscle. That might just be the week that, you moved your body, you sweated a little bit, you elevated your heart rate. Because from that workout, when you walk out, we all know what it feels like, those people that do train. As soon as you've walked out of that gym, there's this automatic sense of achievement. And you've actually really done something positive for yourself, because there's a symphony of hormones that get secreted. Feel-good hormones from the brain into the rest of the body, which, is undeniably so powerful and just sets you up for the rest of the day,
And I think it is that just showing up is also, particularly for the people we're talking to, very largely have not made time for themselves. They haven't put themselves first. They've always put other people first, which is very noble, but can be have long-term effects. They're now in a situation where they need to put themselves first, and I guess we don't want them to be intimidated by the idea of exercise. Just showing up, and as you say, having a bad workout is better than not showing up at all. And I
100%.
think that transference you talk about translates to other parts of their life, and
Yeah.
it is showing that habit and that ability to develop that is really exciting.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. Yes.
with with the cohort of people that we're talking about, what are some of the more common issues that you've seen them sort of present with when they come to see you?
Generally, with women um, who are sort of approaching that middle age um, period of their life. Um, obviously the onset of perimenopause and menopause is a big consideration. And that's a period in their life which sees a depletion of two, three, four major hormones in their body. And for me, one of the biggest things that I hear is sleep interruption. Um, obviously fluctuations with mood, um, and obviously with those two things. Let's just use those two things because they seem to be the common characteristics amongst most women. If you're not sleeping properly, sleep is very much paramount. I mean, there's no surprises there. There's so much information out there to support. They're calling lack of sleep the new smoking, right? Because we realise that during that period of sleep now that it resets everything. You know, we all know that we can carry a sleep debt, but we can't carry that sleep debt for too long because it starts to come out outwardly and, of course, inwardly. So trying to deal with a lack of energy and that lethargy is one of the things that I have, that I continue to come across. Um, and
Sorry, Peter, if I can just jump in there,
Sure.
I think that's where a coach can really help because then you have to meet someone somewhere.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
And a problem shared is a problem halved, right? You can actually, like, when you actually verbalize, and this is the thing, powerful thing about exercise is that it is a struggle, you know, even to people who are very, very like self-motivated, love to exercise. It is still a struggle sometimes, right? Because, life, let's get back to the lack of sleep, um, the hot flushes, the lethargy, all that sort of stuff that comes with perimenopause and menopause, probably more so perimenopause, um, is, you know, when you're meeting someone and you've got that accountability to someone else, then despite how you're feeling, having the discipline to show up. And then when you're at the gym, it starts to look after itself. It basically sells itself, because you start to
it's
move
just
your
getting in the
body.
car.
Yeah, exactly. When you start to move your body within the first 5 minutes, you're like, you kind of forget how tired you were. You kind of forget that you've had a, distracted, 4 hours sleep, you know, within reason. I mean, there's obviously, as a coach, you would need to assess whether or not they've got the endurance to keep going as a result of sleep. I mean, that's how important sleep is, right? Could be the difference between cutting the set short and pushing through for 30 reps. That's the difference. As well as nutrition and other things which we might pop up, touch on, we might not. But that just meeting your coach, meeting your trainer, having to be able to talk and workshop just about how crap you're feeling, sometimes makes it that much better. You know, um,
And it speaks to how important trust is, that you can be vulnerable and open up with the person that you're training. If you feel like they're judging you or intimidating you, you're not going to have
yeah,
that conversation and you're
yeah,
probably going to avoid it eventually.
100%, 100%. And it gets back to what I was originally saying. You've got to be able to develop a relationship with someone that you trust, that you like, that you can open up to.
Mm,
Um, and that comes with time. That really does come with time.
yeah.
Yeah. So
So,
yeah.
Perry,
So go on. Sorry, just on the sort of how I sort of get around that sort of side of things. Um, it's about trying to make sure that you modify that workout and get as much out of the limited amount that client's got to give based on 4 hours sleep, based on having hot flushes the night before, based on just feeling like they want to tear their hair out, So all of those symptoms that actually come from depletion of a lot of hormones in the body, like your progesterone, like your estrogen, um, increasing cortisol levels, stress hormones. So, it's about trying to manage all of that and
Mm,
not
mm,
making the situation worse for them by imposing too much of a workload. And this comes
yeah.
from listening. Women will tell you, women are good communicators, typically. They will let you know if something feels uncomfortable. Okay. Do you want to ask them? Do you want to go back to that? If they don't want to do that, then we go about and try something else.
As the importance of that open, trusting
Mm.
dialogue and relationship.
Dialogue and
Um,
relationship.
Pero I want to hop on to sort of three or five, 3 to 5 tips or ideas that we can give people to take away and sort of get started on this journey that they're beginning.
Yes.
I think we should start on the nutrition side because we have talked about sort of one half of the equation for a while here. Um, what are kind of a handful of tips that you would pass on to people when they're starting to think about what they're eating as part of this process?
So, first thing I'd recommend would be a diet that is high in lean proteins. As we age, and again, the evidence out there from various nutritional scientists and meta-analyses that have been done over nutrition, um, just recently in the US, is that aging bodies require a certain amount of, in fact, bodies in general, but more so aging bodies require a certain amount of protein on a daily basis to make sure that they maintain muscle tissue and avoid protein degradation, muscle protein degradation. So a diet that's high enough in lean proteins, a diet that's um, the cornerstone of that diet being vegetables and fruit, um, and yeah, just limit, I guess um, processed sugar is obviously one that is definitely to be avoided at all costs. Um,
And that's not just like soft drinks and lollies, is it? I mean, processed sugar is in a lot of stuff.
See, unfortunately, companies have gotten really, really savvy these days, and they've actually started to put numbers which are actually hiding the processed sugar in so-called healthy foods like muesli bars and so forth. It's
Yeah.
it's unfortunate, but I guess if you can keep your diet as whole and as natural as possible,
So it
um,
still looks like the food it was.
still lots of color, lots of crunch, and not the sort of crunch you get from a food wrapper packet. Um, you know, then that would be a good place to start and to sort of uphold and maintain.
And I mean, this isn't, we're not trying to impose, I guess, another measure of perfection that if you don't do that every single day forever, then you failed. But things like eating out and catching up with friends, God, what are some things people can keep an eye out for, maybe on menus to either avoid or trend towards?
Sure. If you're sitting down and having a drink, for example, with someone, um, factor all of that in. If one of your things is if one of your fitness objectives is to lose belly fat, okay, well, not necessarily belly fat, but overall fat, body fat, because we all tend to accumulate it in different areas as men and women. But let's just, I say belly fat because that seems to be the one that's drawing a lot of attention and should actually draw people's attention because it's actually the visceral fat that sits around the organs. That should be the one that people will want to hone in on because that's the dangerous fat. That's the fat that's been linked to 200 different metabolic diseases. Okay, so
And that's not the visible one always, is it?
that's
That's the
no. So the visible one is known as subcutaneous fat. The non-visible fat is visceral fat that sits around the visceral organs. Now, if you're going out, you can always make some modifications. Keep it lean, try and keep it lean. Um, And if you can't, let's just say you have a blowout and you order the carbonara pasta and you go through a bottle of wine, right? Apart from feeling really, really rough and probably taking about 24 hours to get over the impact of that, the attitude shouldn't be, geez, I'm a horrible person. I'll never make it in this fitness thing. Don't worry about it. Write it off. Get back on the wagon the next day. Get back on the green salads, the green veggies, steamed veggies, the lean proteins. Start moving again. Don't leave it too long. You know, go for a long walk the next day. Um,
And
you
I'd
know,
almost to say maybe give yourself permission to have enjoyed that blowout. Like carbonara and a
yeah,
bottle of wine with some friends.
yeah.
It's not a bad evening.
It's not. Listen, and this is, fitness has got to be, like I said. I think I made the mention earlier in the interview. Um, Fitness shouldn't be about punishing yourself about what you have and haven't
Yeah.
done. Fitness is exercise, movement. An exercise program should be a celebration about what the body can actually do, you know.
Mm, mm,
And the more you can encourage your body to do, the more you can encourage your body to stretch and get in positions it hasn't been in before, the more you're going to benefit, right?
mm.
Uh, Obviously, don't try and contort yourself and get into a pretzel type position if you haven't had because someone heard it on a podcast and it's supposed to make you feel good. Work up to that, but that's what the body can
Progress.
protect. Progress, exactly, and we've mentioned it a lot throughout the
Mm,
throughout
mm.
the cast.
Which I think is, yeah, you're not going to get results straight away. Like it's a matter of working at it. What's a bit of a tip you'd like to leave people with in terms of just starting the exercise process?
Start slowly, do your research, phone around to some local gyms, ask ask around. There's a lot of community groups that are community Facebook groups that clients can actually jump on. Your listeners can actually jump on. For example, the local community group. Like for example, I live in Carnegie, and we have a Carnegie Kindness and Friends page, which basically, as a good member of the Carnegie community, you can jump on and you can jump on and you can actually get recommendations for restaurants, hairdresser salons. Like it's just, we have a business post Wednesday where businesses can jump on and promote their business. You can ask for recommendations from a local group. If you have,
Mm, mm.
there's always Google. We're pretty, the coaches of businesses are pretty savvy, and one thing you are not, at a loss for these days is a choice of fitness destinations. You can either decide whether or not a commercial gym is for you. You can decide whether or not you want to work in a really, really private, secluded environment. I know for myself, I've actually gone from a studio in North Caulfield, closed that, and moved all my operations back home, right? Got all the function of a commercial gym in a private setting. So that might be more of a type of setup for someone who's looking to make a start. It depends what you think is going to keep you going. For example, we've got GSAC around the corner. Some people, I mean, the amount of middle-aged and retirees people I see walking in there during the day, it's incredible. That car park is never not full. And most of those car parks between the time of, say, 9 and 12 p.m. are mostly all retirees. So a group fitness environment might be a better place for these people to start. And they're going to come
So it's
across
recognizing what's going to help you
recognizing, yeah,
maintain the
exactly,
habits.
exactly. But I've had clients come and see me to take that initial step,
Yep.
and then after a while, they've actually also joined a local gym because they actually
Mm,
feel comfortable. Plus, you're getting access to, I mean, one thing that I must say is that, when you do go to a local gym, you don't get that one-on-one attention. You get a friendly face and you get to know other friendly, familiar faces as well, who are
yeah.
attending the group. It depends what you feel you need. If you feel like you've got some real considerations because you've got some limitations in terms of biomechanics and there's some physical things that need managing, then I'd say work one-on-one with a qualified, experienced trainer who can actually help modify the program for you. And that information, remember, what you're dealing with, when you're talking about a local gym, we're talking about lots of stimulus around, right? Lots of distraction. When you're talking about a one-on-one setting, you get you and you. There's two people, and the information exchange. I know my quality of my sessions have actually gone through the roof because I can now concentrate properly.
Yeah.
Whereas I found myself getting distracted when I used to be, the days that I used to work at a local gym.
And I guess something that's popped into my mind is with the modifications or limitations that people may require. I imagine working like having a chat with your GP before you start a big program or
Always.
start that process just to get that check done is
Yeah,
a really good idea.
yeah, always, always. Yeah, look, it is absolutely mandatory that that happens. And if your clients listening have been on top of their health, then regular trips to the GP have probably already been done. Um,
Yep. Yep.
and yeah, look, it's not going to hurt getting just a diagnostic checkup, some bloods done initially when just before you start your exercise regime, just to find out because there might have been some sort of residual deficits in certain vitamins and minerals and so
Yeah.
forth in the body,
Just to set the baseline if
just to
nothing
set the
else.
baseline. Yeah, exactly, absolutely, absolutely. Um, yeah,
I'm going to throw a curly one at you.
sure.
What is one exercise that people should I don't know should the people that you'd love people to be able to do consistently? Just one.
I'm gonna have to say a squat. I'm gonna have to say a
Yeah.
squat.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, only because you know the center point of your balance is your pelvis. You know, that's if you can get pelvic stability, and you need a lot of pelvic stability to be able to squat. Yeah. Um, yeah, I would have to say the squat's probably
And
one
that's
of them.
loaded or unloaded, right? So even
Yeah,
just
correct.
a
Yeah,
free
correct.
weight.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. It's a pretty functional movement, and we need it a lot.
You mentioned balance. Speaking of physios and people like that, that's a huge factor as we age, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I see it deteriorate a lot, and it deteriorates really quickly if you're not training to maintain it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because
And
that part of the
once
brain
you've lost it,
starts.
it can be very hard.
What's that?
Once
Sorry.
you've lost it, it can be really hard to get it
Yeah,
back.
very, very much so. Very much so. But not impossible. But you've just got to, again, sort of be able to work with someone who can um, who can actually help you develop or maintain that, and know what positions to what exercises to prescribe in order to make sure that happens.
I think I'm just reflecting on what you were talking about earlier about finding the type of exercise that works for you and that changes over time. I was thinking the people that have been through bereavement and loss, one thing that comes out of that from what I've seen is a lot of reflection, a lot of self-reflection and self-awareness. So, it's probably a bit optimistic, but I think one of the silver linings of what people have maybe been through is they will have a greater idea of what will work for them.
Mm,
And so I think that's really important that you do find the path to exercise that's right for you.
yes.
And I think one-on-one training definitely sounds like a great place to start and continue when that's working for you.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Perry, just before we start wrapping up, I'm keen to hear. Do you have any sort of common mistakes or traps, perhaps, that people fall into as they're starting off their exercise journey?
Yeah, look, I think it's and this is kind of not exclusive to middle-aged and elderly people. This is actually exclusive to human beings, right? They go gung ho right at the beginning and then just fall off. And I mean, this is a thing known, it isn't just here, but I've had the pleasure of working overseas in the overseas market in the UK and the US as well. And it is something that gyms face all the time. people start, they're gung-ho within the first 6 months and then they drop off. Exercise is, like we mentioned earlier in the interview, it's a regular thing. It's a just like you get up and you brush your teeth in the morning. That's how you should be aiming to position exercise. So the more inbuilt in you can make it, the more you're going to benefit from it. Because a little bit of movement every day is the way forward. Okay? So it's about doing too
Start at
much too
100.
soon. Yeah, exactly. Start at 70, then drop to 50, and then go back up to 70, and go to 80, and then drop down. Like it's just, you will drop down. You will drop down. It's a human, it's a certainty as a human being. Like it's life happens, stuff happens, but you've got to remember, even if you're going through really dark times or you're going through really sad times, I know firsthand that I would probably go as far as saying exercise has probably saved my life because it actually took me out of a very dark place, and it was my commitment to the process that has probably kept me alive. And I know that sounds a little bit over the top, but that is my story. Okay.
Yeah, I've
Um,
heard that.
you
Yeah.
know, there's things for, there's things, your deadlift for depression. Um, it's a real thing. It is a very, very powerful drug. It's very powerful and something that I urge, especially in these times that we're living in, especially if you go through something like a loss. It is something that can change your outlook and your whole life. Your self-esteem, how you look at life, how you relate to other people, physiologically. I won't even, it'll take another podcast to actually go through all the physiological benefits that exercise brings. Um,
I really like the point you made there when you were talking about the difference exercise has made. You you were not talking about the results that it gave you. You were talking about the power of showing up, the power of consistency, the power of commitment. And those things are all outcome independent. I mean, the outcome is the outcome. It's the process that you committed to that led to that. And I think that's a really powerful
yes,
message for the people listening. So thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Um, don't progress too quickly. Be consistent and don't rely on motivation to get you there. Motivation is dwindling. Just commit to the process. When you start an exercise regime, just say to yourself, I'm starting this new daily activity. This is what I must do. Okay? And I think if you can factor it in to everything else that is happening in your life, whether it be grandkids, kids, grandkids, meeting up with friends and other social groups, um, kind of place that first. Kind of look at it as you're getting your battery pack and putting it in and turning it on, because essentially when you make more time, and James Clear talks about this in his book Atomic Habits, you know, it's about stacking those little habits for them to become actually inbred and part of who you are. Um, get it done early. There's huge physiological benefits in doing exercise early in the day. When I say early, and that's all relative for different people. Early for me this morning was 5:30. And as we age, it's a physiological certainty that you actually do need less sleep. Okay, so most people are waking up at a pretty early time. So the best time they can possibly look to exercise is probably before 12 o'clock. But for whatever reason, if they can't get it done before 12 o'clock, getting it done
Yeah, that's number one.
is a number one consideration. Um, the other thing is this. Sorry, Jordan. The flip
No,
side of that is this: is allowing yourself to progress at a decent rate. Now, that's relative to the individual. Not training hard enough is also a consideration, because if you want training to be of benefit to your body, that is, if you have some physical objectives that you need to meet, i.e. losing body fat or putting on muscle to make your body more stable, some people will duplicate the same movements and sit at the same weight for too long. That also needs to be considered. When you're ready to progress, you need to progress and push a little bit harder. The body loves to be pushed. It responds really positively to it. So what I'm saying is duplicating the same exercise regime over and over and over again is also not good. So avoid that trap.
You need some variety. Thank you, Perry. I think it's been really good. I mean, we'll wrap it up, but
Sure.
I think those traps, I think they're easy to fall into those habits. But I'm just thinking back to what you said about exercise is not a punishment. It's not a makeup thing. It's a celebration of what your body can do.
Yeah.
I think that's it's a brilliant sentiment. And hopefully that's the message that translates. Now, Perry, before we do wrap up, where can people reach you? Where's the best place to get in contact?
Sure. So I've got a website, www.longevity-through-wellness.com.au. They can find me on Instagram. I'm not really that active on social media, to be honest, Jordan, but best place to meet me. And obviously they can sort of contact me through yourself as well. You've got my contact details, but yeah, that's my website. I operate around the Bayside area, Ormond, McKinnon, Carnegie, Murrumbeena, Brighton, Oakley, so I've got sort of my catchment of clients around that area. So,
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's me.
Perry, thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing.
It's been my pleasure, man. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been a joy to talk to you.
And again, thank you for listening to Life Loss and Legacy, a Planning Solo podcast. If you do have any questions, comments, or queries, please feel free to email me at Jordan, Jordan, @planningsolo.com.au. We have created a little Facebook group for people that are interested in discussing these topics. It's very early days, so please feel free to join over there. And until next time, thank you for listening.